Dan, welcome. It is an honor to have you for your author interview with the Legacy Journal.
Thank you, Walter. It was an honor to write an article for the journal and also to be able to share this one with the world. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And I know I've said this to you at least a couple of times already, but you have an amazing author's voice. It's so personal, and you just convey, even in print, that wonderful warmth that you have as a person. So success all around.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, writing is the way that I'm able to make meaning and process. So, it's just,
Absolutely.
and thinking about where it came as a kid, where I struggled to read and write.
Yes.
Like this is when I found success with it. Like now it's that one thing that I can use to really just get my thoughts out in a better way than even speaking. So
And there is something about when you know it's going out to other eyes that even if you're having these internal conversations about career and journey,
geez.
and
Yeah.
once you have to think about it in terms of how do I want other people to receive this, changes the game. So
It yeah, and it takes a level of vulnerability, because sharing your writing with the world is it's scary.
yes,
And being able to write this, it was at the perfect time
yeah,
for me to be able to share it. Even if you had asked me, like, 6 months earlier,
right,
I
right.
probably wouldn't have been able to write that. You know what I'm saying?
I
So,
do. I totally do. I appreciate that.
yeah.
So you're originally from the Pittsburgh area? Where are you from
Yeah.
originally?
North of Pittsburgh, in a really small town outside of Clarion, Pennsylvania. It's like an
Okay.
hour and 15 minutes north of Pittsburgh. Everyone says they're from Pittsburgh if they're from
Right.
the western part of the state
Right.
because the towns are
It's
so small. So
so Steelers, Pirates, Penguins.
oh, all the way, all the
All right.
way. You're born with black and gold blood.
Absolutely. And honestly, even here in DC, and if you haven't been in Fairfax long enough to appreciate DC, although I think you're probably pretty well acclimated, there's even Steelers sports bars
Oh,
in Northern Virginia. So you don't even
yeah.
have to go home to go watch a game with people that are right there with you. It's black and gold.
You got that right. In fact, I made the connection when I first got a job, when I first got offered a job down here through other Pittsburgh fans
Yes,
and Pittsburgh
yes.
natives. So it runs deep.
That's what I call networking. There you go.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, when you submitted the article, and you it hit me right off the bat with the imagery is not the right word, but describing the quiet whispers.
Hmm.
And we all have them.
Yeah.
And I can remember 40 years ago having those internal dialogues
Hmm.
and wondering where I should be and if I was on the right path.
Hmm.
But Dan, 40 years ago, we were not a generation that was in touch with those feelings. I
Yeah.
mean, we were raised, you're in there, you do the job well, it's a job.
Yep.
So for your generation, and you in particular, to be able to put a voice to that and to do it so, I don't know, the only phrase I can think of is poetically, because you
Yeah.
weave it throughout the article to keep coming back to it to say,
Hmm.
this is my inner dialogue, these quiet whispers that keep saying to me, hey, tap, 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 better rethink things. This doesn't feel like I'm in
Hmm.
the right place. Um, was that just natural? Did that just flow as you started writing? How did you come up with quiet whispers? It's genius.
That's a good question. I guess when I sat down to write it, I had to think about like what did I because I was experiencing this for a very long period of time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's really what it was. It would come and go, and so I wanted to put a name to it. But
yeah.
I also, the analogy of climbing a mountain where you feel like you're climbing the wrong mountain. Um, I wanted to be able to express to people who maybe are going through the same exact thing. You
Exactly.
know, I wanted to be able to put it in some kind of context that would make sense to them. And so, over the past several years, there were moments when that were maybe the whispers were a little louder, you know,
Right.
and maybe it wasn't so much a whisper. And some of those times I probably, suppressed that voice
Right.
and was like, just stop it,
Right.
because I do think coming from north of Pittsburgh in a really small town,
Yep.
very traditional values,
Yep.
in many ways still stuck in a later generation. And
Right.
I'm not saying that in a negative manner, but
No,
just,
no. Yep.
when I went off to college and started teaching in Pittsburgh and then in Virginia, I'm like, oh my gosh, the world is so much bigger than I ever realized growing up in such a small town.
Yes.
Um, and so those whispers that's what they were, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
um, that's kind of, I guess that's just the name I came upon because, um, that's really what they were. They kind of like exist down in your gut, and
Yes.
sometimes you want to push them down because you're worried about what other people are going to think,
Exactly.
and that's what
Exactly.
I did for the longest time. I had this sense of loyalty to a school system and to
Right.
a group of people. I
Yes.
don't know why, looking back, I'm like, my gosh, why? But I think everything happens for a reason. And I
Yep.
think every bit of timing is meant to happen as it is as well.
Yes.
And as it rolls out. I don't regret any of the
Oh no.
decisions I made or the time I spent anywhere because I think
No.
I learned a tremendous deal.
Yes.
And I also think that time helped me to amplify, or it helped to make those whispers louder,
Love it.
and
Love it.
which gave me more peace in my decision. So
It's so powerful. And the all everything you just put into words encapsulates what the vulnerability is all about. This is a very personal narrative.
mhm.
But it's so poignant. I don't mean to, you're rocking like I'm making you uncomfortable. I don't mean to
No,
be making you uncomfortable.
no, it's all
It's
good, Walter.
it's like it was so
Mhm,
poignant that it was a no-brainer when we looked at all the articles and a number of wonderful articles in this issue. It was just like,
mhm.
okay, this is the lead article. This is going right up front.
No,
Bam, this is going to speak to people.
yeah, I think because I'm incredibly honored and humbled by that fact.
Yeah?
And that was not what I was aiming for. I was just
No.
aiming to be able to put my story down on paper.
Yes.
And when I did, I went to a Starbucks coffee shop. I sat down with a coffee,
Huh.
put on some music, some earbuds, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's time that I just tell this journey that I've been on and be able to put
Yes.
it into writing because maybe someone else is experiencing the same exact thing.
Of course. It's so human.
And like I wish that I would have been able to, pick up something like that and just read it. But every experience I had along the way, even in many of the experiences we've had together, I would just spend time asking other people, like, well, what do you think about that role? Or
Right.
I was kind of taking internal notes the entire time,
Yes.
which helped to build up my courage eventually to make that decision. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's so true that, and for the time that I've known you, you are very reflective, and your self-awareness is a strength for you. So I can see how that would fuel all of this and frame it for you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you were
Yeah.
9 years in the classroom.
Yeah, 9 years in the classroom, which I absolutely loved. I
Yeah.
never even thought that I would want to leave. I always wanted to become a teacher,
Yep.
right? And so a third and a fifth grade teacher,
Yeah.
teacher of the room 21 rock stars. I
Yeah.
love those years. And there are still moments every single day when I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss those days.
Exactly.
However, those whispers started to grow in year 8 and 9, and the pandemic happened,
Right.
which forced me to become a teacher that was hard. If
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest,
Yeah.
it was hard to be the teacher that I wanted to be and that I thought my students deserved in that
Yes.
space. And so then I decided, let's try something else. And you know um that's kind of how I came to be. But all of those days as a teacher, um just grounded me and helped me to become who I am today, to be quite honest. And even the other day, we do a walk it like I talk it lesson, my principal and I, each month with a teacher. So we just pull a random name in our staff briefing and
Yeah.
each month, and we give them that time off and we go in and teach. And I was able to teach a small group of multilingual learners on Friday, and it just filled my soul. I was able to stay in touch with that element. And now, yes, I'm juggling all these different elements of the school.
Yes.
Um, However, all of those moments, all those moments that I, learned all these different strategies and ways of being and who I am have kind of, propelled me now. It's kind of helped me with my North Star. So if I have
Yes.
to have a hard conversation, you
Hmm.
know, now I'm like, that why is pretty strong inside of me, and it helps me through some of those tough moments because I know what I value, what's important,
Right.
and who, what really matters. And so
Yes.
those harder conversations come a little easier. They're still hard, but they come a little easier as a result.
Well, and certainly they withstood the test of vetting and going
Mhm.
through tough times, so you can feel
Yeah,
much stronger about them. Yeah.
yeah,
So
100%.
you were then, at least when I met you, you were at the point where you were a new teacher mentoring program leader, and
Hmm.
you were rocking that. I mean, we were
Yeah.
hearing nothing but accolades. I need to
Hmm.
backtrack for a second and say you had been a teacher of the year in the classroom
No.
too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, you've been racking up the trophies, and yet
Mm,
that that whispering voice again surfaced. And to me,
mhm.
it says you weren't you weren't being fed and nurtured professionally as much
Indeed.
as you were good at the work and you liked the work and
Hmm.
you weren't just running away from the work.
Hmm.
That voice was telling you you needed to keep
Yeah.
moving. Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, Walter, because those accolades, yes, they kept piling up. But I have to be completely honest, and I hope I
Yeah.
expressed this in the article somewhat.
Yeah.
I would win something or achieve something, and I felt so empty afterward.
Wow.
And um, it's almost like I got into this time of my life where I felt
Yep.
like, okay, let's chase the next thing,
Right.
and
Right.
I did.
Yes.
And I worked relentlessly to get those things, right?
Yes.
I spent endless time. I basically, had one element of my life, and that was my professional life, right?
Yeah.
And I sacrificed so much to achieve those things. But at the end, after those accolades, I felt so empty,
Yeah.
you know, um, and just like, okay, was it time for the next? And for a while, that was enough to continue to work toward. I was like, okay, let's go for the next one. Let's go for the next one. Let's
Right.
go for the next one. And eventually, at some point, I was like, no, like
Yeah.
that's not what fuels my soul, right?
Recipe for burnout, honestly. I
It
mean,
is.
yeah.
And so I think that, working with the new teacher program, which I loved, and I
Yes.
love supporting new teachers, but I
Yep.
never felt like I belonged in one place. I felt like I was in all these different places.
You were.
And that sense of community and
Yep.
culture, which I thrive on having those relationships with others, was really hard.
Yes.
And so I learned some valuable lessons about building systems and structures.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that time. I
Oh,
liked,
yeah.
but what I always would tell people is I didn't love it, right?
Ah,
And that's to me, if we have a finite amount of time on the earth, so we have to find something that we are so willing, to love, and that should
yes.
be professional and personal.
Yes.
And with the professional end of things, I'm at the point now where I'm not after the next award.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like that
Yes.
doesn't mean anything
Yep.
anymore
Yep.
to me. I want to do something. I want to be involved in work that's purposeful and meaningful and that connects with my passion. So
Yes.
it's like I was saying, climbing that new summit, a journey of passion and purpose. How can you find the connection between passion and purpose? And so that's kind of, that those 3 years working with the new teacher program, I really loved, or I liked that work, but
Yeah.
I, I never felt fulfilled at the end.
You there's a wonderful excerpt from your article, and indulge me because I'm going to read
Please.
it. It it hit me in the heart the first time I read it, still chokes me up, so bear with me.
Yeah.
This climb had taken everything from me, my personal life and many of my friendships. I've been so focused on the ascent that life was passing me by.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't finished learning or growing, but the quiet whispers urging me to try something new grew louder.
Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful. That just, mm,
It Yes, and that's it, and that happened.
yeah,
I lost touch with people who were my friends.
yeah,
I, didn't really have any form of a personal life during those years in the classroom specifically
yeah,
because I was
yeah,
so focused on just
yeah,
that climb.
yeah,
And I realized that where was I climbing to? I don't know.
yes.
Do you know what I mean?
I
Like,
do.
and
I
looking
do.
back now, I'm like, what in the world was I doing?
Well, my guess is all the success you were having was fueling
It,
this personal expectation. Oh, I got to keep going. There's got to be
yeah.
more because of
Hmm.
being successful. So it's almost, and I see this a lot today. I see this a lot working with younger professionals
Hmm.
that there's so many ways to be successful that it's easy to get caught up in what's the
Hmm.
next shiny thing
Indeed.
and have that emptiness inside where you're thinking,
Indeed.
yeah, it's that's why this article is so important and
Yeah.
can't thank you enough for writing it.
Oh, absolutely, Walter. Yeah, it's um, when you feel like my role now is hard as all get out, and I learned
Yeah.
so much in a
Yep.
year, in less than a year, and it challenges me again, right? So
Yes.
it's like, yeah, I had to go back down that mountain to climb a new one, to find
Yes.
a new trail,
Yep.
and uh, it just feels good, you know.
It does. It really does. And being an assistant principal is it is building based as opposed to district based, but it is
Hmm.
such a hands-on,
Oh yeah.
gritty,
Oh,
all the moving parts.
oh yeah.
So it probably was a logical next step in
Hmm.
learning, growing, and acquiring more skills. I mean, it's probably right in your wheelhouse.
Hmm. Yeah, I've been able to apply, so really from all the different roles that I've had in the past, I've
Yes.
applied different skills and strategies I've learned from each. So
Yes.
that's really cool too. And I know this might sound silly, but the reason I chose to go to a different school division is because I wanted to go somewhere where people just didn't know me
Yeah.
for what I had accomplished.
Right.
I wanted to just be myself and
Yes.
kind of be a nobody in terms of, you know, I want to learn and I want
Yeah.
to meet people again. I want to, so that might sound silly to maybe someone listening, or maybe someone can resonate with that, but that's ultimately why, because people are like, well, why didn't you just become an assistant principal where you were? Or
Right. Right.
because it was time for me to, kind of fly from the nest, so to speak,
Yes. Yes.
and to start fresh without those different things on my shoulders.
Yes.
Like, oh, he achieved this, or oh, he was this. No,
Right.
I just wanted to be Dan, the assistant principal,
Yep.
and to start anew. So,
And I think that's key. It feels like a fresh start.
mhm.
Yeah. As
Yeah.
opposed to being in the same district for many, many years, you start to become a known quantity and it just isn't the
Hmm.
same. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And it takes some expectation away from you as well. Like, not in terms of achieving high levels, you still want to do that, but it takes some
Right.
expectation. Oh, well, you did this, or
Right.
you know what I mean? Like,
I
now
do.
it's allowing me to truly learn the role
Yeah.
and to be reflective
Yeah.
and to just kind of dig in so that I can be the best that I can be.
Yes.
Um, and also to start anew with that balance. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Absolutely. Well, you glow when you talk about it, which tells me everything because
It's,
you're where you want and need to be. So that is
Mhm.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
think the biggest service you did in the whole article, after everything I've already been going on about that I love about this article, were the 5 questions at the end.
Yes.
Because if I'm the reader and I've gone through the journey with you, and then I'm sitting there at the end of the article thinking, well, I'm still kind of figuring out my own journey. To
Hmm.
have these 5 guiding questions is really a nice way to tie it all together. Were they obvious to you? Did you kind of think them through?
I guess I kind of thought them through. I really wanted to give something to the reader because, like I said, if there's someone else out there who has those same quiet whispers,
Yes,
I kind of thought to myself, what questions are necessary, right? What questions would I want someone to have asked me?
yes, yes,
Do you know what I mean? If I was talking this through with someone else. And so, in crafting those, that's kind of how I thought about that. And the reason I put the questions at the end is because I wanted this to become a tool. I didn't want it just to be about me. I want this story to be able to propel others in their journey. And
yes,
so that's kind of why the questions were there,
yes.
um, to kind of serve as that springboard for someone else.
Well, I love the fourth question that says, look for patterns of when and where you're at your best. That
Mm.
that takes a lot of self reflection and awareness, and we're all so busy. That's not easy to do.
It isn't. And, I've started a practice of gratitude. So, like, each
Yes,
day, just being, what am I grateful for today? Because, the world can be incredibly heavy and,
yes,
sometimes we can get into the weeds.
yep,
And when I was in my last role, there were many times when I would sit at my desk and I would think to myself, like, I have not been my best self lately.
right.
I seem agitated or angry. I'm always, you know,
Yeah,
almost like I'm always upset about something, and and I was like, that's not me,
no,
right? And so at that moment, I was not at my best.
yes,
When I thought about those days in the classroom when I was at my best, I just had on my Facebook timeline
yes,
yesterday pop up. Like
yeah.
6 years ago, I took my class up to Washington, D.C.,
Oh, yeah.
and we were going to a specific museum, but we were down at the World War II monument, the
Hmm.
memorial, and this bus stops,
Yeah,
and all these men and women in red polos got out, and they were these veterans.
yeah,
And a couple of my kids, and I'm not making this up. This is one of my greatest points of pride as a teacher. A couple
yeah.
of my kids went over and they gathered the rest of the class and they created a tunnel off that bus.
Wow,
And they wanted to stand there as every single veteran got off and they were cheering them on. They were shaking their hand,
wow.
and the parents were just in awe of their kids. And as a teacher, I was just like, oh my gosh. And when I talk about like those looking for those patterns,
Yeah,
that's when I felt that I was at my best,
yes,
not because of what they were doing, but you know, just thinking about all those little seeds that we plant that we may
yep,
never see as
yep,
teachers or even as administrators. That was one piece of visible evidence of why we do what we do.
yes,
And so look for those patterns of just, you know, just times when you feel really good.
yes.
And whatever you were doing at that time, that's what you should pursue because that is kind of a mix of your passion and your purpose.
Right.
Um, you know, and that's sometimes hard to find. Sometimes maybe we're doing something that's our passion, but maybe it's we don't feel purpose driven, and or maybe the opposite. So we have
Right.
to kind of find that intersection, and it
Yeah,
takes it's trial and error. Sometimes you're going to try something that just doesn't pan out, and that's okay
it
because
is.
we learn things from that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I went off on a tangent, but in what I'm saying there is, look for those moments, go back into memories, go back into cards from students or whatever role you're serving in, and look for those moments when you just felt so good and just so fulfilled inside. And that might give you a little hint, or it might make that whisper a little
Right.
louder.
Right. The other of the 5 that truly got me thinking was number 3. Who are 3 people in your life you could
Mm,
talk to about their passion.
hmm.
Can you talk a little about that? I mean, the article
Yeah.
focuses on you and pursuing your passion. What's the
Hmm.
key there to finding people that you can talk to about their
It's
passion?
it's really kind of like information mining in a way. I think I told you earlier, like during those few years when I just didn't feel good about what I was doing,
Yeah.
and I don't think I had the intersection, I would just ask people questions and listen.
Yes.
For instance, I asked a lot of APs and principals, what do you love most about your work?
Huh.
Because I was kind of like I was just trying to get information. I was
Sure.
trying to find, how did these people, people who truly just seem to love what they do. And I'm not saying every day is going to be positive. There are some days that are really hard. So I don't want to
Absolutely.
sound toxic positive in terms of, what I'm saying here, because trust me, it's not easy. But I think in find other people and talk to them about their kind of intersection of passion and purpose. And you might get some clues along the way. You might find some moments of courage that they had to have. You
Yes.
might find that they have some insecurities still
Yes.
that maybe you also share, because for the longest time, I was worried about what other people were going to think if I made a career move, which
Yep.
now seems so silly. But
Yeah.
at the time, that is exactly what was weighing me, like keeping me from doing anything else. I
Wow.
was worried about what others were thinking. So, in asking other people and talking to them about their stories, I think we have a lot that we can learn from them.
Yes.
So, that's just one more. That's kind of what question three goes after.
It's fantastic. The entire article is just a gift. And you've alluded several times in the interview of if there's one person out there that might feel this way, there is an entire
Hmm.
world of us out there. And you help us to be more honest with ourselves about it and more in
Hmm.
touch with it. And for that, we can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Walter. I so appreciate this opportunity. Like I said, this was very therapeutic for me to be
Yeah.
able to write it out like this.
Yes.
It just meant the world. So, thank you.